My name is Bess, and together with my husband we run Main Ridge Dairy on this beautiful property. We have a herd of lovely dairy goats that we milk daily, and we turn their milk into cheese right here on the farm. We do have a significant creek, or two tributaries of a significant creek, which is Main Creek. So it is very important that we manage the pasture in such a way that we don't destroy the creek. So you can see the creek is actually down below this paddock, and you can see there's quite a lot of vegetation there. So we try to keep at least 50 metres of riparian vegetation on each side of the stream. So anything we do up here in terms of fertilisation or changes doesn't affect the water quality. We actually never fertilise just randomly. You know, some people just think, oh, I need to fertilise my paddock, so they throw a whole lot of phosphate on. We will always test the soil first to make sure it actually needs it. So we actually do very little. It's a really good growing country. It's a really diverse pasture. There's lots of different grasses, there's different species of clover in here as well. Goats, being a browsing animal, if they browse a plant like a deer, they get more acacias like wattle trees and things, so they're much more mineral rich, they're more nitrogen and things like that in those plants. It's a beautiful area, the vegetation is beautiful, we've got a lot of birds in there which are really special to us. So it's really important that we don't let too much nutrient from this pasture get into that creek. You know, if we do that and raise the nutrient levels in that creek, we could cause issues with the water quality in terms of algal blooms or too much nutrient and plant growth that's not right. So fundamentally important, I think, for every farmer to look after their land and not let nutrients get into those creek lines. 30% of this property is actually locked up as natural bushland, so that means it is never accessed by the goats at any stage. So you can see along the edges of the property, so all the boundaries of the property have shelter belts that we've planted. So we've planted over 5,000 native plants on the property to link the areas of vegetation. Now these standing old areas of vegetation are actually called remnant. So by linking the remnant areas of vegetation with wildlife corridors, we provide movement for animals to get through. And then you can see here too that there's a dead tree. So people often come onto the farm and say to us, why have you got all these dead trees standing there? They're so ugly, you know, it's great firewood. But they're so important because trees take 100 years to form a hollow, and so many of our bird and mammal species need hollows to reproduce. So if we cut those trees down, those animals can't breed and can't have babies. If the farm is healthy everywhere, it just works so much better. So by providing access for the wildlife corridors, we're also providing shelter for our stock. Even though they can't get in there, they can get shelter from the wind. It's quite windy up on this ridge, and also shade when it's hot. And we're also providing habitat for small birds, which are really important in controlling pests in our pasture. Without that, you know, our whole farm health is not good. So by locking up 30% and doing these things, we're actually increasing the productivity of the farm.
Hi, I'm Kevin Wyatt. I'm a long-term resident of this area. I breed cattle and I volunteer for a local land care group that's involved in testing waterways. If we have a look at this creek behind me, two things to take note of. One is that the stream is confined within its banks. It's not running all over the place. And secondly, the vegetation comes right down to the edge of the creek. As it comes down from the catchment, some of which will be farmland, which is being fertilised, any excess fertiliser will be filtered out by the plant and doesn't get into the stream. But if it does get into the stream, the ramifications of that is that it will change the growth of plants in the stream, and if it changes it enough, the plants themselves will start to take, for their own respiration, will take oxygen out of the stream, and the microorganisms that we want to be living in the stream just won't have enough oxygen to live, so they'll disappear. If animals have got access to the riparian, being the banks on either side of the creek, they will now start to knock down the vegetation. They'll graze some of it, they'll debark some of the trees, and all of a sudden the nice dense filters that exist at the moment in this location will start to disappear. Animals get down to the creek edge in order to drink, and with their hooves and their weight, they're starting to push the bank of the creek into the creek. Then the sediment increases. That's detrimental to any fish that are living in this creek. We now provide a pumping situation where water is pumped out of the creek to a holding tank somewhere high on the property, and then it will gravitate out to troughs across the farm. If the stream is healthy, then the macroinvertebrates that will exist in the creek will increase in number. We test for things like available oxygen, for phosphate and for nitrates. And they're the ones that are going to cause an oversupply of vegetative growth. And so over a period of say 10 years, we can compare what the situation is in autumn over those periods of time. We test the pH of the water, so it's acidity or it's alkalinity. We test conductivity, and testing for conductivity is testing the density of ions in the water. Does tell us which one, but it tells us that either there's what we would expect, an average amount of conductivity, or all of a sudden we've got an increase in ions and there is something wrong. That's the point of having the database. We can pick when all of a sudden there's an input that shouldn't be.